So then, 5 years, 5 long years after it was first announced by Riot Games, Arcane has finally come to a close. And wow, what a story, what a journey it has been. And the best thing is that this is only the beginning of Riot's exploration of the League of Legends universe. But today, we're going to talk about the final act. The final act of this story, one of the greatest animated shows to date, and answer the question of, did it live up to expectations? Well, right off the bat, for the most part, I would say yes. And before we dive into it, just quickly, if you enjoy this video and want to see more Arcane content from me or cover other stories, please make sure to subscribe. This is a growing channel and one simple click, just subscribing, would really help. But now, on with the video. Also, by the way, this part is just a small spoiler-free section going on. If you haven't watched Act 3 yet, you might want to just get a few thoughts on it without spoilers. But there are timestamps on the video for when the spoilers start, so be on the lookout for that if you haven't watched Act 3 yet, or if you want to skip ahead to me deep diving into every episode. But without further ado, let's talk about Act 3 of Arcane Season 2, the end of this incredible tale of two sisters. And like I said, yeah, Act 3 for the most part was very good. I really enjoyed it, and as I have with every other Arcane episode to date. Episode 7 in particular hit me so hard emotionally, and the ending of episode 9, despite a few hiccups, managed to somewhat satisfyingly close out the story while setting up future tales in this universe, which I am thoroughly excited for. Yet there was something about this finale, I'm not going to lie, something that just didn't hit like it was supposed to. Because for some reason, even though episode 9 was longer than every other Arcane episode in season 2 by a good 10 minutes, I was left feeling unfulfilled in a way. It didn't feel like the story should have ended there. There were still so many questions, so many unfinished storylines, so many characters who could have been handled so much better, Jinx, Victor, and Jace in particular. However, that is all in the last episode, so we'll get to that shortly. But now let's circle back to the start of Act 3, Episode 7. So big spoilers ahead. And to all those Echo fans out there, I know that there are a lot of them. You were all complaining about him not turning up in Act 2 at all, but guess what? He got himself an entire episode in Act 3, which I thoroughly enjoyed. Also, Echo turned out to be single-handedly the most important character in the finale, without a doubt being the one who won the fight for the so-called good guys. But focusing back on episode 7, I very much enjoyed this one. We get to see the story, the lives of Jinx, Vander, Silco, Vi, Myla, Clagger, and so many more characters in an alternate universe, an alternate reality where Hextech wasn't created. It was really fascinating and extremely sad at the same time, as Echo, sent into this alternate reality, finally had his moment with Jinx that so many Time Bomb fans were calling out for. Believe me, I've been part of the Arcane fandom for a while, and my god, the Jinx and Echo shippers were relentless with fanfics, theories, and all the rest. But I honestly saw why in this episode, because it honestly is just meant to happen for Echo and Jinx to be together. And their scenes in this episode in the alternate reality are so good. I enjoyed them so much, and I have to admit, I was very sad when Echo returned to the normal timeline. But on the other hand, though, whilst you've got Echo and Jinx here in a steampunk high school musical, we then have Jace, who, well, did kind of go through hell after he was chucked through the hex gate. And now comes my moment of triumph. Because to everyone that was hating on Jace, saying that he was an absolute idiot and a horrible person for killing Victor in Act 2, inadvertently also resulting in Isha's death, well, here you go. Episode 7 completely justifies his actions, and it shows us exactly why he did what he did, why he killed Victor. Because he saw something truly evil in the Arcane, knew that that was what Victor was doing, and knew what Victor was doing was wrong, and that he had to stop it. And yeah, Isha's death was an unfortunate consequence to that, but this episode all but proves that Jace deserves a big green tick, because what he did was not wrong. It was a necessary evil. The last two episodes also prove that, and I will not hear anything against Jace or his actions. And I'm not even a big Jace fan. My favourite characters are probably Caitlyn, Vi, and probably Vander too, so there you go. But he is not bad. He didn't do anything wrong. I mean, this guy was in literal hell whilst Echo and Heimerdinger were living it up at parties, singing songs and whatnot. That is just cruel. But yeah, overall, I did really enjoy episode 7, and if I'm being honest, was emotionally up there with episode 3 of season 2, episode 3 of season 1, and maybe even episode 9 of season 1. It was that good. With Echo spending time in another reality, allowing us to see what could have happened, what life could have been like had it not been for the creation of Hextech, which, as Jace says, really was the beginning of the downfall of Piltover. Also, what a hero Echo is, leaving behind this place where he could be so happy with Powder, to come back and save everyone at the cost of his own happiness pretty much. What a guy. And moving on then to episode 8, this one is probably the least talked about simply because the least happened. Like sure, some big events occurred, but the main crux of part of episode 8 was just building up to the huge finale that was episode 9, putting all the characters in the right places, setting up key plot points, etc. And also setting up pre-existing plot lines for the finale such as Victor's glorious evolution, the Black Rose and Mel, and Ambessa. And one very key storyline, I assure you, that we explored in this episode was Vi and Caitlyn's characters and their relationship. Because, well, if the Time Bomb group were happy with the last episode, the KVI fans were losing their minds. Me too, but on a smaller scale, I promise. So yeah, that did happen. Vi and Kate finally got their moment, their scene, inside of a jail cell. So I'm just gonna scoot past that real quick. That was really freaky. But rest assured, I was happy with that scene just as much as you probably were. I just hope it wasn't inside of a jail cell, but the fangirls couldn't care less, I don't think. Moving on, another very important storyline in episode 8 is the Black Rose, which is also relevant in episode 9 as we are introduced to Mel, but this time a sort of different Mel, one much more powerful and with the Black Rose's influence. But I can't help but feel that the entire Black Rose story was completely unnecessary, and this comes from a non-League player, so please, League players who understand all the lore, please don't come after me for this. However, just as a quick aside, I do plan to become one of you soon. I actually recently installed League of Legends and I'm planning on making a video about it soon, me playing it for the first time, but goodness knows when. To be honest, it was mainly just so I could continue enjoying the world of Arcane despite the show being finished, which also goes against the advice of every single League player in existence to not ever play the game ever, but I'm excited either way. Anyways, back to it. Yeah, I don't know much of the League lore, including the Black Rose, LeBlanc, all that, so take this with a pinch of salt, but I really felt like the Black Rose plotline was so unnecessary. In both Act 2 and this act, it was just another side plot that barely contributed to the main story, except for Mel being more powerful and Ambessa having a better backstory. But other than that, it was just another addition to an already stacked story that was trying to tell so many different tales and complete so many plot points at once. And that honestly just about sums up Act 3 of Arcane Season 2. So good, so very good with its characters, majority of the story, the music, animation, plot twists, and much more. But it's so filled and so stuffed to the brim trying to tell so many stories at one time that it goes at a breakneck speed and any sense of pacing goes out the window. And that is the one major flaw of Arcane. Less of a problem in season 1, but painfully apparent in season 2, things are just going too fast, and Riot seem to have bitten off more than they can chew in terms of lore, trying to cram in as many things as possible in one. For example, Jinx's supposed death, which we'll discuss more later, was just not fleshed out nearly enough. We got a couple of minutes of people being sad, then a bit of Caitlyn and Vi to end it off, and that was it. That was the end of the show. It was just too much stuff going on at once, and that is pretty much the best way to sum up Arcane Season 2 as well. But back to episode 8, and oh my word, I have to say, I was so impressed by Ambessa. Because while she may not have been the main antagonist of this act or even the story, that accolade goes to Victor in the end of it, she is brilliant, and one of the best, most well-written antagonists I've had the pleasure of witnessing in recent times. And this all comes down to the fact that once again, she is not evil, and I know that we are in this era where making just genuinely scary villains is no longer a thing, and it's all about making the villains sympathetic and giving them a motive which is all about the greater good. But very few pieces of media are able to pull it off, and even less are able to pull it off the way that Arcane spectacularly manages to. Because Ambessa and Silco from last season, and even Victor this season, are so well written. Ambessa will do anything to protect the name of her family and to make a legacy for not only herself but for her name, for the Medardas. And she wants this so much so that to the extent that she loses herself, ceasing to be a Medarda, as Mel says, and does some truly despicable things. Yet she has been through it all. The Black Rose, of course, being a huge part of her backstory, having to watch her eldest son be taken away from her. It's clear that Ambessa is not just a bloodthirsty war tyrant who wants nothing more than to destroy Piltover, etc. forever. She wants to instead make a name for her family and is driven by the trauma in her past. Also, one last thing I want to discuss with episode 8 is Jinx. Because I thought that she was going to run away after Isha's death, leave Vi behind and kill herself, as we know that she had some seriously bad suicidal thoughts all throughout season 2, and in a way I was right. Because while she didn't run away right away, but rather escaped out of Kate's dungeon, those suicidal thoughts were still very relevant, and she was going to blow herself up before Echo arrived, as he always does to save the day. One thing I was a little disappointed by was that there was zero mention of Isha. There were a couple of flashback moments, but that was it for Isha's character, which I honestly feel is quite unfair given the gravitas of her sacrifice in episode 6. We definitely could have spent more time reflecting on her sacrifice, but either way, on we go. But let's move on then to the final episode of Arcane, the one that we were all waiting for to close out this story. So, was episode 9 the perfect ending to an almost perfect show? Well, it's complicated. There was good and there were bad in episode 9, and somehow it turned out to be one of the worst, yet one of the best episodes of Arcane. I know, it makes zero sense. What I'm trying to say is that some moments were so unbelievably good. They hit so hard emotionally, they made the story so much better and contributed to giving us a satisfactory ending. But then there were some scenes that I really did not like and really brought the finale and thus the season as a whole down, if I'm being honest with you. And one really weird example of the episode being both terrible and brilliant was the whole conflict between Jace and Victor. This one was really, really odd. Whilst it looked visually outstanding, I mean, just look at it, this entire scene just doesn't feel right. Victor changes his mind about the Hex deck literally after 5 minutes of talking with Jace, and whilst there were other components to that, such as Echo taking off a piece of robotic Victor's mask so the real human Victor could peek through and see what was going on, it was still a remarkably fast transformation for Victor, who literally just changed his mind like that, which is pretty underwhelming when you've been building up a character the way Victor has been for a full season. And we still don't have an answer to what happened with the pair of them. Did they both die? Are they both just stuck in some weird outer space place, not really in a specific time period? No one really has a solid answer to that question, but the leading theory, and mine, is that they both sacrificed themselves to reverse evil Victor's actions and save the people of Piltover and Zor. Again though, this is a classic example of the show being so rushed, the big important questions such as these are completely unanswerable for fans. Though I do kind of appreciate that they are open to interpretation and not just like spoon fed to us, something that Arcane is masterfully good at not doing. Also, plot twist, Maddie turns out to be a traitor. And yeah, once again, this was something I wasn't really a fan of. Maddie was a much more interesting character when she was innocent and completely trusting because it made her arc very intriguing to see how she would handle Vi being back in Kate's life, but also how she handled Kate and how she was a bit different to literally every single other character because she just did not know what was going on. But in that said, she just got sold off as a traitor. It just ended up feeling cheap and a quick way out to prevent any friction with Vi and Kate, but her death was satisfying though, so I can move past it. But then, of course, we have the big moment. The moment where Jinx sacrificed herself to save Vi. And whilst this scene was quite strong emotionally, I am 99% sure that she's not dead. There's a couple of clues to this, one being Caitlyn very pointedly looking at the plans for the weird funnel thing where Jinx fell, and seemingly smiling, a pretty obvious hint that Kate knows that she's alive. Also, the last scene of the show is a massive airship flying past the camera. A ship that, if you remember back to Season 1, Episode 1, Powder said that she wanted to ride someday. So there are some very obvious hints that Jinx is alive, which I would like, but Riot would have to handle it very, very well to not make her surviving seem like a cheap fan service. Also, Mel and Kate's fight scene against Ambessa who dies, and a lot of the battle between Piltover and Noxus and Victor I did really like. So overall, a satisfying, yet somehow unsatisfying, and very, very rushed end to Arcane is the best, most concise way to describe the final episode of Act 3. So overall then, how good was Act 3 of Season 2? If I'm being perfectly honest, it was a step down from the other two acts we've had in Season 2 and maybe even the weakest of this show as a whole. There was a lot of stuff that could have been done so much better and it just felt in the end like we were missing episodes. We needed more episodes or longer runtimes to flesh out characters and plot lines properly to give Arcane the ending it deserves. Overall, the best I could give Act 3 is a 7.5 out of 10, with Act 1 being probably a 9 and Act 2 being around an 8. But nonetheless, I've enjoyed and loved this show ever since I watched the first few minutes of Season 1 all that time ago, and I'm hugely grateful to Fortiche and Riot Games for being able to produce such a masterpiece of a television show. And of course, we're going to miss it, I really am. But at the same time, we're all hugely excited for all the future shows and adaptations we have coming in the League of Legends universe, so don't forget about Arcane and this story so quickly. But that's all from me today. Thanks for watching. Make sure to comment down below what you thought of Act 3 of Arcane Season 2 and Season 2 as a whole, and make sure to subscribe. It's a growing channel and would honestly really, really help. But that's all for today. Thanks for watching. Darth Sauron, out.